When a timber rattlesnake strikes gardener Priscilla Meredith, she rushes to the hospital to receive treatment, but the doctors refuse to give her antivenom, believing that her deteriorating symptoms are caused by something else. Even as she suffers cardiac arrest in the emergency room, they assume that it is due to another reason other than the most deadly snake in North America. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. On May 27, 2019, 62-year-old Priscilla Meredith was gardening at her home in Brunswick, near the Georgia coast. Originally from West Virginia, she had lived more than 30 years in Brunswick. She was born with a green hand, always admiring flowers and the natural beauty around her. Priscilla was married to her husband Timothy and had 2 daughters and a son. She was also blessed with 5 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren and loved spending time with her family. But at a time in her life when she should have been enjoying retirement and the freedom it offers, Priscilla's life was tragically cut short. After a morning in the garden, she and her sister were collecting up their gardening tools and some stepping stones when Priscilla went to sit down. She hadn't noticed that right beside her was a timber rattlesnake. It was camouflaged among the shrubbery, and it lay coiled and poised. Danger was just inches away. Common throughout the eastern United States, timber rattlesnakes, also known as canebrake rattlesnake or banded rattlesnake, are considered North America's most dangerous snake. It's relatively large, has long fangs, and a high venom yield. However, the antivenom is extremely effective and saves many lives each year. Around 8,000 people are bitten by rattlesnakes every year in the U.S., with only around 12 individuals dying. That's a 0.15% fatality rate. On top of that, timber rattlesnakes are not considered aggressive snakes and often brumate or enter a state of dormancy during the colder months. This means that although they can deliver a deadly bite, contact with humans isn't that common. But all it takes is one encounter, and you could be in serious trouble. There are thought to be more than 100,000 adult timber rattlers in the U.S. They are widespread snakes, however, their numbers do seem to be in decline. Hunting and collecting the snakes, vehicle strikes, and habitat loss have all contributed to this. They don't start breeding until they're around 7 years old, and females only produce offspring every 2 to 3 years. So population declines take considerable time to reestablish if they fall for some reason. As Priscilla leaned back and lowered herself to the ground, she came within inches of the snake. Suddenly, it struck out and Priscilla leapt up. She had felt the sharp pain as the fangs pierced her skin. She wheeled around and looked down at the spot on the ground. There, lying hidden among the vegetation, was a timber rattler. Its yellowish-brown body was patterned with dark brown crossbands. Immediately, her sister grabbed her and walked her away from the snake before inspecting the wound. Priscilla tried to keep calm, but her heart was thumping loudly in her chest. The snake had given her a fright. Neither she nor her sister had heard the typical warning sound of a snake's rattle, nor had the snake hissed or raised itself up slightly in a threat display. Instead, the 2 women had been completely oblivious to it, and now Priscilla was in very real danger. There was always a chance that the rattlesnake had delivered a dry bite. In about 25% of venomous snake bites, no venom is delivered, serving only as a warning to the intruder or threat. But it didn't take long before the area around the 2 puncture wounds began to tingle, and Priscilla knew she needed urgent medical attention right away. This definitely wasn't a dry bite. Although rattlesnake bites rarely cause death, that's largely down to the administration of antivenom, without which victims are likely to die. Treatment would ensure Priscilla made a full and speedy recovery. Her husband Timothy rushed her to a Southeast Georgia Health Systems hospital. When she arrived, the ER doctor on call assessed Priscilla's wound. Then, instead of giving the 62-year-old the much-needed antivenom, he called the Georgia Poison Control Helpline. This was standard practice for the hospital in that situation. However, Priscilla was about to be failed by the very people who were paid to look after her. The so-called experts on the other end of the phone told the doctor not to give the antivenom unless there was swelling and bruising around the bite site. When the doctor inspected Priscilla's wound again, there were no signs of swelling or bruising, but she knew that she was beginning to feel the effects of the venom. The doctor reassured her that they would monitor her symptoms, but she did not need the antivenom. By now, Priscilla was displaying textbook symptoms of being envenomated. She developed nausea and breathing problems, and her organs were being affected. All she needed was the antivenom, but doctors withheld it from her. The venom was now coursing through her body. The toxic enzymes were breaking down the internal tissues. The venom from timber rattlesnakes specifically has been shown to induce myokymia, an involuntary quivering of muscles or muscle fibers in localized areas. While Priscilla struggled with the overwhelming toxicity of the rattlesnake venom, doctors simply treated her symptoms rather than the obvious cause. Even when Priscilla went into cardiac arrest, the emergency staff failed to treat her for a toxic snake bite and were convinced her rapid deterioration wasn't linked to the rattlesnake. Miraculously, the medical team managed to bring Priscilla back. It was the hope her family needed. There was a chance that she would make it. She was surrounded by a medical team that should have known what they were doing. She was placed into a medically induced coma and put on a ventilator to help her body recover, but her body struggled to fight off the toxicity of the venom. She had had a bad allergic reaction to the snake bite, which made it hard for her to overcome the effects of the poison. As her kidneys began failing, functioning at less than 30%, she received daily dialysis to keep her going, but the outlook was bleak. Initially, the doctors were hopeful that Priscilla would recover, even if it meant a long, hard road. But it was not to be. As the days passed by, Priscilla never recovered from the bite and very sadly died weeks afterwards. It was a direct consequence of severe medical negligence, and her husband was outraged at the lack of professional care Priscilla received. He and the rest of her family believed that Priscilla could have been saved had she been treated for the rattlesnake bite when she first arrived at the hospital. Timothy filed a lawsuit against Southeast Georgia Health System's Brunswick campus, Atlanta's Grady Memorial Hospital, and Emory University, along with several of the doctors. Nobody could understand why Priscilla was denied the antivenom. If she had been given it when she first arrived at the hospital, then there was every chance that she would have survived. The antivenom is made up of venom-neutralizing antibodies, which help the body to fight against the toxic components of the snake venom. In response to the questions about the care Priscilla received, the medical director at the hospital, Dr. Mohsen Akhlagi, responded. He said that all staff follow recommendations set by the Georgia Poison Control. If they were advised not to administer the antivenom, then they listened to that advice. There were rumors that hospital staff believed that Priscilla was allergic to the medication, which is why she was not given it. Dr. Gaylord Lopez, who was the managing director of the Georgia Poison Control, said that antivenom is only given in 25% of cases. If somebody is suffering from an allergic reaction to the snake bite, then their allergy is treated, and then they are given the antivenom. But this didn't appear to be the case with Priscilla.